is really to look at some of the more recent incidents of gun violence that have occurred in the Arbor District that we know are symptomatic of a larger problem, not only in our community, but also across the country. So our goal today is to get some information out to people, to get a chance to ask questions, and then find a way that we can keep working on this. Because we know that one meeting today isn't going to solve this problem. 12 meetings a year, we could have a meeting every day and that's not going to fix it either. So we want to figure out what some actionable items are that we as residents can take and some further action that we can ask from our city leadership as well. There will be a time for questions and answers after the panel gets a chance to speak. We'll also be presenting some facts and figures as well. I do just want to give a quick warning that we will be showing a video that has some gunshots in it. You can't actually see anybody get shot, but we are going to be showing that here. So if you do need to step outside during that, we will give you a heads up before we play that video as well. I also ask that we just respect each other's time and listen to each other while we're here as well. These can bring a lot of emotion, so we want everybody to feel heard throughout this. But we also want to make sure it's productive and not just going to turn into pointing fingers. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the members up here. Go ahead and introduce Nathan Colombo as well. He is setting up the live stream for us so people who aren't able to come today can view it online. And he's also going to be helping me keep the flow with this on target to make sure we stay on track with everything.
Absolutely. And this may not necessarily get live streamed out there easily. It looks like the Wi-Fi, now that we've got everybody in here with phones, may drop a little bit, but that's okay. We are recording this, so we will release this afterwards. So folks who want to see this, who weren't able to attend this meeting, are also able to see it. The program this afternoon will start with an opening presentation here for shootings in the Arbor District and in Carbondale, with information that will be presented by Jane Adams. We will then go into a survey by a hands of the audience here. We will have 3 questions to ask folks specifically related to gun violence and your experiences, simple yes/no questions with raises of hands. We will then receive opening remarks from our panel regarding their interactions and their understandings of gun violence in Carbondale. Once we've gone through that interaction with the panel initially, we will then open up for audience engagement, where we will have individual responses from audience members related to the questions that we asked at the hand raised portion. Once we've asked those questions, we will then seek questions from the audience for the panel here. And then we will have a couple of questions fill in as needed from the Arbor District itself. Then we will close out the program with a review of key points and next steps that we look to take following this program. Our control mechanisms for this conversation this afternoon will include repeating the guidelines as needed, staying focused on the topic of gun violence, and working to enforce time limits so that we make sure as many folks that want to get heard can get heard this afternoon. So with that, I will turn it back over to Kyle.
All right. And before we get going any further, I'd like to take a moment, if any elected officials are here, to just stand up so we can thank you for coming, even just as an audience member. Thank you all. And I'd also like to thank those who are running for office as well that have shown up here. We want to make sure that everybody has a chance here as well. So if you're running for office this year, can you stand up? Wonderful. So thank you again for coming. At this time, we are going to start off with the video. And then Jane Adams is going to go into a presentation. Before we get to that, though, I am going to say other panel members here. We have Jane Adams down there at the end. She is our secretary of the Arbor District Neighborhood Association, has been around for a very long time. Next, we have State's Attorney Cervantes. I want to thank him for being here from Jackson County State's Attorney's Office. And then finally, we have Diana Brawley-Sussman. She is here to represent Carbondale United, a local organization that's already working to reduce gun violence in our community. And hopefully this is an opportunity to get the word out, to expand that service and come up with more solutions for the problem. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to start off with a video that does have a loud gun noise to it. So if you need to leave, step out for a minute. This will be the time. It'll be about 1.5 minutes. If not, Benjamin.
Incidents. 5 of which appear on the city's crime map, one of which mysterious to us. As we watch this, the first, I think this is the first, he put them all together, and you'll be able to see which is which. In the first one, you'll see a street go across. And I think that one is a bullet that landed in his neighbor's bedroom. Back in October 2021. And then there are a series of others. And then in the last one, or the next last one, you can actually see, if you look right here, you can see the gunshots. Because they were standing in or right next to his yard to shoot back towards the house. Where all this action is taking place. So go with the. And the police now are working on it. They have been given a nuisance violation, which I'll talk about in a little bit, has been activated, and the residents of the house are going to move. But they moved from one place where they're having a feud in our neighborhood. They're very likely to move into another neighborhood with the feud continuing. And so, while this is the one that got us energized, they may show up somewhere else once they're out of this house within Carbondale. Or they may go to Murfreesboro or Aaron, who knows where. Okay, so now let's go to some of the facts that I got energized to go to the city crime map and actually see the nature of crime in our neighborhood. And I sat down and I looked at weapons offenses. Weapons offenses are both shots fired and then a general category that's weapons offense. And I'm not sure what falls into that. I don't know if the state's attorney, Montes, can help us with that, but it's a broad category. So I go all of the weapons offenses that were reported and they show up on the city crime map like that, all over town. You see right there, which is the Arbor District up in here. That there's a real concentration. There's another concentration up in part of the northeast, and there's more around in southeast in this area. So now let's look at approximately 140 incidents reported that police reported about that. That doesn't mean it's all that happened. We know one of our ones we know about, we heard, is not reported, it's not appearing in the map. So, but around 140 incidents reported of gunshots fired and other weapons offenses in 2022. And up to, I think this was January 2nd was when I got this map. Okay. And then in our neighborhood, there were 39 reported instances of shots fired and weapons offenses, which was about 28% of all of them. We're a very small neighborhood, so this is very concentrated, so it's very personal for many of us. And you can see that each dot may represent multiple incidents, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But those are the locations of all of the shots fired. And you can go to your neighborhood and you can actually see these on the website. So this is how they went. I just took them, I made a spreadsheet, and I like graphs and I like to know when things happen. And so this was the seasonality. So it goes from January of 2021 to January of 2023, and that's just the first 3 days of January 23. So we've had a lot of gunshots in our neighborhood. You can see that it spiked in April, and just get a sense of how many a month. 7 was the maximum number. Now, I said this is not simply gun violence. These gun incidents, the shootings, are one thing, but they come from places where there are lots of other violations. And so I looked at assault and battery, criminal damage to property and trespass, and shots fired incidents. And let me talk a minute about this criminal damage to property and trespass. If you live in our neighborhood, you know that there are a tremendous number of vacant single-family homes, and that we have had, over this past year or so, many, many people squatting in those homes. And so those many criminal trespass to property, criminal damage to property and trespass doesn't only refer to those. It can be graffiti, it can be other kinds of misdemeanors and crimes. But I'm using it as a proxy to give you a sense of how extensive the problem was, because it's just been enormous. And so you can see these, and I think it's associated. In fact, I know it's associated in some instances get inhabited by people who are involved in drugs and fight and feud and whatnot. So this is in the 500 block of South Poplar, which is just right here. You know, it's like right next to our place, just the next block south. There have been, at one site, I just picked up one of those icons, and it picked up 3 assaults and batteries, 4 criminal damage to property and trespass, and 1 shots fired. And if you click on the other icons around that, you'll see that they reflect not as many incidents in every one of them, but similar kind of clustering of incidents. These are all seem to be many times associated with one another. We consider our neighborhood to go over to Illinois Avenue, and there are lots of congregations of young people, and there are often shots fired and fights associated with that. There's also a bar up in here, and there are shots fired and fights that are associated with them after closing time, from what I understand. So, which seems to me to be a different set of issues than the ones that we face over here, where we have people who are actually living in the neighborhood who are feuding with other people who may or may not be in the neighborhood, and so you have it's the same people. Here it tends to be, I think, more transient. You know, the people who are there. Okay, next one. Okay, so that's just a graph of there were 96 in our neighborhood instances of trespass, criminal damage to property, and trespass in this past year. And in the summer, we got really active about that and started really leaning on the police and on BNS to deal with it. And they started really putting up lots of boarding up lots of houses. And the city council passed an ordinance, a vacant property ordinance, so that people are supposed to register vacant properties so they can keep an eye on them. Okay, next. This is assault and battery instances, and this one I organized by street because I wanted to see where most assaults and batteries were happening. And you can see that South Illinois, as I talked about, is the site of a lot of them. And then Mill Street, which runs right along here. And I don't know the nature of that. That's one, there's a lot of gunshots, and there's a lot of assaults and batteries all along Mill Street, right just next to the university. And I don't know who's involved in those. Next. Okay, so then I just did a little map of assaults plus weapon offensive incidents reports in 2022 for the whole city. I didn't try to go through and transcribe the whole city. It was enough work to do just the Arbor District. It's a tremendous amount of work, actually. The thing I noted, I wanted to see where murders were happening, and they are not listed. Homicides are not listed on the city map, nor are assaults with a deadly weapon pulled out. I don't know how they appear. We did have 2 homicides in the Arbor District, one in domestic, the other one apparently one of these feuds or something. And then there was one over on Park Street, I think, anyway, on the east side. That were not listed, and I pulled them out of the newspaper. Okay, here are the ones. Okay, 100 block East College was domestic. 200 block West College Street was a shooting at a large gathering. And then on the 700 block of South Lewis Lane, there was a man who was listed as a death investigation, but he appeared in the newspaper as a homicide. So I just wondered whether the data on the crime map are reliable. I think they're reasonably reliable. You've seen the shortcomings of them in terms of how they break incidents down, things that aren't shown. and that many reports that people make don't get filed as reports that show up here. If you call in to 911 and say there's an active shooter, shots fired, and a police officer doesn't come out and take an actual report, it's not going to get recorded. Even if they take an actual report, as we've seen, it may not get recorded, and I don't know where that slippage is, because I think they do a pretty good job as a whole. But,
About 2 more minutes.
okay. Then, the city does have a lot of resources. There was a study that was done on crime, on gun violence in Carbondale. It's up on the city website. There's crime mapping, C-Click Fix, where you can report these things. They don't go on to crime map if you do, but you can report them. The city overview of their program for gun violence and prevention and intervention. Police press releases, which I found very useful in tracking who's getting arrested. And if you have a Ring doorbell app, you can post your security footage there for the police to access. They've developed a relationship with Ring to be able to do that. And if I understand that if you're income limited, you can get a free one from them, but I don't know how that program works. For the police press releases, which I follow all the time, you have to go, you come in up here and then you have to scroll all the way down to here and sign up. But you just take whichever ones you want, city council announcements, whatever you want. That sheet is by, well, I had 50 of them. I don't know if they're still there, how many, but I made up 50 of these sheets of this information that you can pick up of how to access those. And if you fill out your cards, we can send out this with a mailing about what happened at this meeting and kind of a summary of the meeting. So
We'll stop there.
we can stop
Yep.
there. I have more, but this is
Yep.
fine.
Let's stop there for now.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jane, for presenting that. I've now asked State's Attorney Cervantes to take about 10 minutes and talk about the State's Attorney's Office, what they do, kind of the state of everything with that at this point in time. 10 minutes.
Okay. Is there a microphone?
That mic right there, well, just gotta speak loudly.
All right. Well, first off, thank you for coming together today. I wish we could, do more of these, of course, under different circumstances, right? I met Jane when I first got elected in 2020, maybe prior to that, and had some really strong, very good conversations. We agree on a lot of things, but there's things that we don't agree on necessarily. One of them is going to be that, sometimes we don't have to wait for something like this to happen for us to come together, first off. We just don't. This is not a new thing in the United States for a shooting to happen and for citizens of that neighborhood to wonder what happened and for us to hold law enforcement accountable. It's not new. We've been doing it ever since there's been guns and youth that are willing to use those in their trivial matters. So it's not new. We just need some motivation to do it. And unfortunately, we always have to we've been waiting for situations just like this to come together. But from my office, 3rd floor, even though it's the tallest building in Murfreesboro, it's not very tall at all, but from that office, I have this data. And I can see clearly where the crime is and what's happening. And often, no matter how tall that building gets, sometimes my calls for help, they're unanswered. So I'm your elected state's attorney. I've been elected since 2020. My job as your state's attorney is the chief law enforcement officer of the county. I am privileged to hold the position, but a lot of people still don't understand exactly what I do. And some of you see me in the community going to your community functions. And that is one of my jobs, is to make sure that I am present in the community and you know who you're paying to lead law enforcement. But I do that for a reason, because it's very important to make sure that we don't have young individuals, and make no mistake about it, the people that are responsible for many of these shootings are young, very young. Average age 22. Average age in my county jail right now, 23. And that's a stat that I know. because I do this on a regular basis. And when SIU wanted to do a study, much of the data they got was from my office, as my office is wide open to any of you whenever you need it. But my job is the criminal prosecution of all crimes within this jurisdiction. Also, I handle the civil matters in the county as well. A lot of people don't know that. But what does that mean? Does it mean I sit at my desk all day? No. I'm involved with law enforcement, and I'm supposed to be. When there is a homicide or death investigation, I go to the scene. I'm notified when there's a shooting. I saw these videos. I saw them as soon as they were provided to law enforcement. They get text on my duty phone, they get emailed to me. I have the same link as CPD, and I explain to police sometimes what exactly do I need to solve this issue. What do I need? Do I need more witnesses? Do I need more interviews? Should I come to CPD and listen to these interviews? Their question to me often in these investigations, Joe, what else do you need? My answer is this, this, and this, and then I will file charges first thing in the morning, or tonight, or I'll go get a judge right now. While you are sleeping, our law enforcement officers are working all the time. And that involves my assistant state's attorneys as well, who are always on call 24 hours a day. So while you are putting this together, we're solving this crime. The only issue is where are our county board members for this district? 6th district, right? Where are they tonight? Scott Comparado, Aaron Ashley. Going once? Is that right? Going twice? 3 times. They're not here. And when I assess the situation with the state's attorney's office, to let you know that we are behind, that we haven't added attorneys, we don't have an investigator, I don't have paralegals, I don't have a victim advocate for juveniles to watch the juvenile programs, I don't have a second victim advocate, that most of the time, we just have enough to get by and file charges. When we did have enough help, barely, last summer, I was at full staff that we've ever had staff before. We had 13 weeks without a shooting in Carbondale. But the media covered that a little bit. We had 13 weeks minus a weekend with no shooting. One of the best summers that we've had in recent history. Because our assistant state's attorneys weren't bogged down in court at that time, we were out with police working cases. Now it's the other way around. I can't hold assistant state's attorneys for salaries of $50,000. They tell me I have 150 to work with, but I have to hire 4 attorneys. It's not going to get it done. We have the same staff that we've had for the last 30 years, and we have more crime than we had before. So when I ask for a victim advocate or someone to look at crime data in my office, or for a paralegal, or for one more assistant state's attorney, and the county board has refused, in fact defunded my office, every single time I've asked for the last 2 years, and they're not at this meeting. They're not at this meeting. So my job is such that I need to lead law enforcement in these investigations. We have 14 current murders in our office, which is a lot for a small office. We have 70 plus offenders in our jail, mostly are gun offenses. We usually average about 150 in our jail. 70 plus are gun related. So this is not the narrative where I'm keeping men and women in jail for stealing diapers for their kids. That just doesn't happen in Jackson County. My jail's full of offenders who do not need to be on the street because I have the information that the public usually doesn't, that you trust me with, that if this person gets out, this is what happens. So I want to talk just briefly about this incident specifically. When I came in, we noticed right away there were 3 main groups of young adults, ages 15 years old to 27 and 28. Some of the younger ones leading the older ones. These 3 groups sectioned off into a group that was in Marion and 2 that were in Carbondale. Right away, we got a list. I asked for a list. I studied a little bit about gang prosecution, although I won't go as far as call them gangs. They're groups of kids that hang out together because they lack resources and support in their own personal lives and family lives. And so they band together. It's nothing new. I'm not reinventing the wheel. But when we identified 30 plus of these individuals, we quickly had 22 plus in custody for their gun offenses last year. There was one group that was left behind. One group that was involved with many shootings over the summer last year. One of them was injured. One of them responded and retaliated. And one of them is the reason for our meeting here today. If I would tell you right now that 4 or 5 individuals are responsible for gathering us today, what would you think? Would you feel better going to sleep knowing that only 4 or 5 individuals, if I had the opportunity to handcuff them today, that you could go without shootings in your neighborhood for the next year? It's a handful of individuals from the very beginning that are causing a lot of pain and a lot of fright for the city, not just having to do with enrollment, but also having to do with our own personal anxiety and stress, living in a neighborhood that shots can be fired. Well, over the last year, we have dealt with 3 particular juveniles that are responsible for a lot of shootings. They've been in and out of the system. Ankle monitors, 30 days here, let out, 30 days here, let out. And on December 20th, the day after this, just coincidentally, some of you have seen the text message. I sent a text message right after one of them was off of their ankle monitor and explained that we have to watch out. That was the day after the shooting. We were worried in Williamson County that there would be a retaliatory shooting based on this shooting. And sure enough, did anybody read the newspaper about 3 drive-by shootings in Heron and Marion? That's not a coincidence, ladies and gentlemen. The text message from my office to law enforcement in Williamson was not a coincidence. So for the last week, law enforcement from Jackson County and Williamson County and Illinois State Police have been working the situation. We had multiple shootings after this, all the same individuals. And this has gone back to nothing specific, but a trivial matter of 2 different kids and their friends shooting back and forth at each other. That's what it is. And our community is stuck in the middle. So early this morning, Williamson County detained several suspects with firearms, and they're being held in the Williamson County Jail right now. One thing that we didn't have before is the cooperation between Williamson County and Jackson County. I've got their cell phone number, they've got mine, and we've been communicating all day, all week. This morning I was in the Williamson County Sheriff's Office, got a call at 5 a.m. and was in there as early as I could be. But know this, that no matter what you're going through with shots fired, from my eyewitness, and don't make any mistake about it, I'm as critical as far as law enforcement and how many law enforcement officers we need on the street as anybody else. But we still have to come to a realization that despite problems in other parts of the country with police brutality and mistakes that police have made, there needs to be overwatch, there needs to be oversight, there needs to be committees, there needs to be civilians looking over law enforcement. But make no mistake about it, they're working hard. My point of view, real quick, 3 points, is that our law enforcement, no matter how you see law enforcement and how it relates to your neighborhood and your community and your point of view and your political perspective, is important in our community. And from my perspective with Carbondale, this is my first point, our investigators, if you want to limit police officers, you limit them on the road, but I'll tell you what, you cannot limit them in our investigations. Our detectives work around the clock. When I'm working a murder case, which I've had several that haven't been covered, I've done a few murder trials in the last few months. When that happens, my investigation section is completely depleted. Instead of investigating shootings like this, they're serving subpoenas for me because I have 40 plus witnesses in the court because I don't have a witness coordinator. So my detectives who should be doing this are serving subpoenas to get them to court. They work around the clock. They're exhausted, and they're often ordered, from my own personal point of view, they're ordered to go home sometimes. We have law enforcement that's ordered to go home because they haven't gone home. When that happens, we have to look and review at our manpower in investigations. Second, we got to look at patrol on the road, because when there are shooters, the most vulnerable that they are is when they forget to signal, when they don't have a registration, when they put a t-shirt over their license plates, when they're speeding between Marion and Williamson, when they're speeding between Williamson and Jackson County. That's when we catch them with guns in the car. So it's very, very important to understand a traffic stop is not necessarily the unconstitutional violation that sometimes we're led to believe that it is. It's necessary in crime enforcement. Second, it's not just the sheriff's office or the police department. If you double or triple the amount of law enforcement officers that we have on the force, it doesn't do anything, because my office's output remains the same. I can only serve so many subpoenas. I can only do so many trials. I can only do so many diversion programs. So you can triple your law enforcement. If the county board doesn't give me budget for a archaic state's attorney's office, then I can't help you. I can't give you the data, and I can't get you that information you need. Lastly, I need to make sure that not only are we partnering with law enforcement with Williamson and now Union, because there's a small gang down there that we're dealing with, which led to a murder in Jackson County just a few months ago on the Strip. Not only do we have to partner with law enforcement in Jackson and Williamson and Union, the last point is we have to partner with all of you. I have reached out, and I still have a lot of work to do. I still do. But I'll tell you this, when people stand up, there's nothing that I can't prove in court, and there's nothing that our detectives can't do. If I got this outcome and this community meeting, every time we had an event, not just like this, but in other communities too, this would be a different Jackson County. Compassion happens when we start thinking about a gunfight in the northeast side, just as if it was a gunfight here on Forest. When we start doing that, and come together, then I'll be able to get the support that I need from my law enforcement, and I'll be able to lead these investigations like I know how to do. And I know how to do it, and your investigators know how to do it. I just need the resources to do it. So I don't mean to write me a check tonight. Hold your pens. What I mean is, your county board and the city council have to be held accountable. This is not a discussion about taking video cameras away from the city. This is a discussion to ask me why video cameras have helped solve most of my murders and most of my gun crimes. And we are doing that. So if I could call on anybody, one, participate and have an open mind about our law enforcement and our state's attorneys' resources that we have. We can preemptively make the county safe. We don't have to wait for this. And second, hold your county board responsible and your city council responsible for making sure this community is safe, because your community programs, your schools, your playgrounds, your homes, your neighborhoods, they mean a lot, something a lot different if they're not safe, period. But I'm here for you. My office is open. A lot of you have my cell phone. If you don't, get it from the person next to you. Let me know what the problem is, and I'll work with you to try to make this county safer.
So lastly, we're going to have Diana speak for about 9 minutes, about 4 o'clock, and then we'll get into the question portion. We ran a little bit over. So Diana, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I've been involved in Carbondale United for the 3 years that it has been active. And if Nancy Maxwell, our leader, were not running for office, she would be sitting here talking to you instead of me. I'm our secretary, but I have been there since day one. And I became involved as the director of the Carbondale Public Library because serving the cultural needs of our community is within our mission, and this is a serious cultural need. So when we started working with Carbondale United, it was in response to a youth who had died from our high school due to gun violence. In the past 3 years, we have been working toward solutions that are not the same as what Joe can do for you, but solutions that are more systematic. From a gardening perspective, I think you would say it has more to do with pulling the problem out by the root. From a compassionate community and health perspective, it has to do with treating gun violence as almost like a disease that we have to work with people who are victims of that disease and people who have been exposed to that disease. So over 95% of people who go into the prison system get out. And when they get out, they come in back into society with very few resources to participate in our economy, and they come in with a stronger criminal network. So what we need to do is prevent them ever getting to the point where they end up in that situation. That's one aspect of it, which is that we need to have very strong programs for youth, particularly youth who don't have a lot of resources. As Joe just said, those are the youth who are hanging out with one another because they don't have other things to do. The other aspect of that is so there's a preventative aspect. There's also the interruptive aspect. So we've been advocating for a long time to do a program called Cure Violence. It's a program that's been a proven model all over the world. To give you just a few statistics, in New Orleans, when they implemented this, they had a 56% reduction in shootings, an 85% reduction in specifically retaliatory killings. Kansas City, Kansas, 42% reduction in killings. Chicago in 2014, a 45% reduction in re-injury, a 31% reduction in homicide. What the aspects of this is that you have violence interrupters. The interrupters are people who from a proactive level, they get involved with developing trust with the community that is at risk of being exposed to violence or being involved with violence, particularly the youth and young adults in that age group of teenagers through mid-20s. And they are people who can relate to what these folks are going through, because as terrifying as it is for us, and I know it's terrifying, it is also terrifying for the youth who are involved in this. And they are caught in a trap that they cannot get out of. Their parents are terrified, their families are terrified, they have siblings who are terrified, and if you are a sibling in the house who has been exposed to this by an older sibling, your chances of getting involved in this go up as well. So it is a bit like having a disease, and it has been scientifically proven to operate much like a disease does, to spread much like a disease does. So we need to be able to offer resources to folks who are caught in this trap. Those resources are offered proactively by community engagement through violence interrupters, but also the violence interrupters show up on the scene after violence has occurred or as soon as they can, and they try their best to mitigate the trauma that people are going through when they have been exposed to this or been a part of this, and to offer alternatives to responding with further violence. That's why it works, because it goes directly to the people who are committing violence. And we can work directly with people who are also involved in law enforcement. It's a one-way communication system in that law enforcement can tell those of us who are involved in Cure Violence who we need to be interacting with. We cannot tell them anything about our interactions, nor solicit any kind of information from those players about that might land us in court. The reason for that is that violence interrupters are, first of all, having to establish trust No one is going to talk to them if they think that they're basically just taking a confession on behalf of the police. And also because if they were to do that, they'd get themselves killed. You might note that people who are involved in this are also very reluctant to talk to the police. That is because also they are afraid that they will get killed. Violence interruption has a really, really good track record. It's just one of the many things that we can do, along with youth intervention, along with the criminal justice system and what they do as well. But youth who are involved in this are not beyond redemption. They most definitely can come out of this. They don't know how. They don't have the resources to come out of this. They didn't have the resources to begin with to keep them from getting involved in this in the first place. So Carbondale United is a nonprofit. It's been in effect for 3 years. Recently received R3 funding from the state. It's not enough money. We have 2 part-time violence interrupters, and a director who's working without money, who also has a full-time job elsewhere. So we do need more resources. So if you do want to write a check today, I'll give you an address you can send it to. Carbondale United's mailing address is 1301 East Main Street, Unit 2704. That's 1301 East Main Street, Unit 2704, Carbondale 62901. Our email address is carbondaleunited15@gmail.com. We are also on Facebook, and you can find us there. We need robust resources. We need more violence interrupters. We need full-time administration. And I will tell you this, that there is no individual person or organization that can do this alone. There is no one in this community, no unit of government, no office, no individual that you can scream at enough that they're just sitting there lazily who could wave their magic wand and they're just not doing it. That does not exist. It is us. There's no hero coming. It's just your community, and it is on all of us as a community to work together on this, to work with each other as allies rather than enemies, and to treat one another with respect, and to help those people who are involved in this to find their way out of it. Thank you.
All right, I want to thank our panel members for speaking right now. We're going to open up with questions, but before we do, I just want to echo what Diana said. I myself, as a social worker, have worked with many youth in the Redeploy Illinois program, which when that program is functioning, it is an amazing way to provide resources to kids. But when you're working there every day in and out of the houses, it's not an easy life to get out of. It's a lot of fear. There's a lot of retaliation that can come with it. And these kids are just kids at the end of the day. And if you think about it, I have a 13-year-old that was on my caseload with gun charges. He didn't know any other way. So we want to make sure when we're having this future conversation now, for the questions, that we keep in mind that sometimes it really is just kids doing this. Not all the time, but there are just kids involved a lot of times, and you can't do much about that except work to support them and get them out a better life.
And kids who are being shot at by young men.
Mm-hmm. So at this time, we are going to open up for question and answers. My request is that you raise your hand, and we're going to give everybody about 30 seconds to speak, just because we know it may be full of a lot of people. Nathan and I will be walking around with microphones. Please speak loudly. The microphones are only for the live stream, because if you're standing down here, there's great acoustics. So we will go ahead and start with that. Nathan, I will let you grab the first one.
Well, do we want to do the survey of hands real quick? Okay, very good. All right, got Charlie, because you're closest to me right now.
Okay. Has there ever been an incident where a young woman has been the shooter?
I think first off, one of the things I changed when I came into the office to try to get a hold on the crime in Jackson County was I unfortunately now, I still have to do it, because once you start a habit, it's hard to break. But all the felony reports come across my desk before I spread them out to my assistant state's attorneys. Before all the reports would go straight to them, and I didn't feel like I had a good fix on everything that was going on. So now, created a new stamp, because every office needs a new one. I stamp it, I initial it, I read every report that comes in my office, and I pass it out to the assistant state's attorneys. There's been almost no, I don't recall in the last 2 years, and usually we're looking at the reports the 2 years prior as well, because cases were still going on when I came in, of any female, with exception of one female who's actually possibly involved in this situation as well, that would ever pull the trigger on a retaliatory gang-like back and forth situation. Now, we have had female shooters, and the female shooters, from my perspective, have all been, my observation, related to domestic incidents where they have shot at somebody in their family, household, or something of that sort. So there are female shooters. They tend to be in domestic situations and not in drive-bys or retaliatory shootings. Does that answer your question okay? But I will say that there's a lot of female involvement, usually in loaning their vehicles to these young men. Because if I know the vehicle and it's the shooter, I'll take the vehicle because I can do that. They're smarter than that. And so usually we have females loaning things like their own guns, because they can buy guns if they have a FOID card, loaning cell phones, loaning vehicles.
My name is Pepper Holder, and I don't see but maybe a couple of people who should be here, and mostly the young people who are not here, where you may find many of the answers of what their needs are. And then the question becomes, how can you provide for what those kids' needs are? With that, I have nothing against guns. I grew up with guns, hunting all over Southern Illinois, which I find it difficult to do now because of property restrictions and so forth. But there are communities around Southern Illinois and schools who advocate and take their kids to shooting matches and so forth. Murray State offers a scholarship in shooting. There are other colleges around the country that does so. But then you have a community of people here that find that something is wrong with guns. It's the misuse of the gun and not the direction of how to use the gun that these kids not had the opportunity to be familiar with guns. And I think if they had a chance to go out to a training, go out to a match, and start early, they would want to protect their gun rights so that they wouldn't lose them in silliness, you know? So then who was the failure on? Is it on the kid, or is it on these adults who are not participating and helping these kids along? The next thing about all of that is employment. The adults who monitor these kids, who are raising these kids, are not being properly and fairly, equitably employed in Southern Illinois, especially in Southern Illinois. Now, that's another problem on this higher end. Well, I mean, you know, I hear you 30 seconds, I can take 30 minutes.
So we are going to keep it moving along, but yeah, it sounds like we have two things here. First, learning safe use of guns in a more controlled environment, but also employment.
I'm going to say just for a minute, we have nothing, I mean, we want to support the legal and lawful use of guns. Without a doubt, our office wants to do that. When we're talking about gun violence, I think there's 4 categories of gun offenders. The first one is going to be in the one we're talking about in the shooting here, which, by the way, I've just been informed that we believe that the main suspects in that case have been put into custody as of this morning. Thanks to Williamson County Sheriff's Office. Of course, I'll find out more about that later. But there's the retaliatory shootings, young men and women who, by the way, it's not their fascination with guns. It's the fact that they have emotions. They don't know how to resort to solving these issues, and they resort to gun violence to do that. They don't fist fight, they shoot guns because it's easy for them. The second category of gun offenders is going to be our domestics. We have quite a few of those. Even 2 friends or a household that shoot at each other. Many of our murders that we have right now are people that know each other. That offense was taken care of by guns. So it's the domestics. The third one is our drug trade. Just like after Prohibition, it got very dangerous when things started to become legal. Guess what? Cannabis is becoming legal. We're not worried about legal sale of cannabis. What we're worried about is the market, and now more people are using, and the supply hasn't kept up with the demand. And so when we have the sale of cannabis, what we're seeing in our office is the illegal sale of cannabis, which is, that's one thing. Not going to hammer people for selling weed, but when they sell it with a gun in their bag and with cash, that's a problem. And the fourth category of offenders are our felons who are released from the Illinois Department of Corrections, who are not supposed to have a firearm, who sometimes have a firearm before they even get their IDs made to try to assimilate back into the community. And so those are our four categories, and all four of them call for different solutions. We often talk about cure violence and Illinois Redeploy, which I'm on the Illinois board for Redeploy, and I hope to get that here soon. That's one of the situations. We also have to deal with incarceration, people getting out. We have to deal with domestic violence, and we also have to deal with the other. So those are four categories of offenders that all have different problems and different solutions.
You mentioned a 30-day, after 30 days, they don't have ankle bracelets. I want to know why it's only 30 days. If a juvenile has to be institutionalized, what happens in Jackson County?
Thank you.
Well, I have a question for Diana also. Okay. So I'll do it all at once. Diana, are the violence interrupters dealing only with juveniles, or are they dealing with any type of violence? Adults, juveniles?
So the question was, I believe, about juveniles in the process. The Juvenile Act is different than the criminal code. So a law broken under the criminal code goes straight to criminal court and adult court. If they break a law, anything in the criminal code, and they're a juvenile, the first thing is we can only hold them for 6 hours right away before we have to release them to their parents. Or we have to file a petition for detention in which the judge will hear whether they are dangerous to persons in the community. And if the judge finds that they are, then we have to hold them until their hearing to actually find out if they are. So there's several deadlines that are very time sensitive. And typically that process, once we find that they're dangerous, the standard's really high on that. We can't just hold it. If a juvenile steals, they're going home with their parents. If a juvenile is in possession of a firearm, they're probably going home with their parents. And usually we know a lot more than just that. We know if a juvenile comes, we get them on possession of a firearm, we probably suspect them for a shooting as well that occurred recently. So it's very difficult to detain, first off. There's a high standard to meet. The next thing on that is that they need to be put into a juvenile detention facility while they're being held for incarceration that is not the jail. We cannot hold them in Jackson County Jail. They have to be held in a juvenile detention facility. We do not have one here. We do not have one in Williamson. The only one we had is in Franklin County. And that one, just several months ago, I preemptively said that we would no longer bring juveniles to that detention facility because they came out with a report that said that they weren't feeding them, that they didn't have hygiene, that there was no standardization for earning points for good behavior. It was rated one of the lowest, the lowest facility based on their inspections of any juvenile facility in the state of Illinois. So I pulled all of our juveniles from there, and we started sending them to different juvenile facilities. The next ones are Vigon, Indiana, St. Clair, Mississippi County, Missouri, and Clinton County. And if you think about it, if I hold a juvenile for 6 hours, at the end of that, or if I want to detain them, then our sheriff's office, our tax dollars, are transporting them 2-3 hours away, then coming back. Then the next day to bring them to a hearing, going there, bringing them back there, and then coming back again. And so we're talking about 8 to a dozen trips just in a few days just to prosecute our juveniles. And so naturally, when we're short on, here's the word again, resources, we tend to have a really high burden of whether we're going to hold juveniles or not. And once they get held, they know that if they keep their mouths shut and they do their 20 days or 30 days, that they're going to be released. They know that. So it doesn't do them any good to work with law enforcement, and it doesn't do them any good to do anything but wait until they're off their ankle monitor again. In fact, the text I told you about on December 20th was specifically because someone got off their ankle monitor, we saw a shooting, and we knew it was them. Definitely room for reform.
question or wondering if this is even a possibility. I'm gonna preface this. I had to take my parents home this past week down to Alabama. And then all this came up. And one of the things I noticed in their neighborhood, and I don't know if this is something we could do in the Arbor District to make us feel a little more safer, is they had actual cameras that were set up. I don't know if they were with the police or if they were with crime watchers, but they actually had video cameras set up along the streets that would capture crime in their neighborhood. And I live on Cherry Street. We have quite a bit of crime. I've myself been the victim of someone stealing something from us. Is there a possibility, or is there a way that that could be something? To me, it would deter if these young people saw these cameras, not just people's doorbell cameras, but actual cameras up on the poles. Would that help deter them from wanting, they're going to be captured on tape? Would this deter them?
The greatest tool that I have is videos. Juries nowadays expect me to have a video of the crime. Otherwise, they just shake their head at me and say, Joe, why didn't you do better than that? Most of my major crimes, the murders that I have, I'm pretty sure most of them are on video. And it allows me to negotiate. It allows me to get done with trials and get on to the next case. The video cameras are the single greatest tool I have as a prosecutor. And when we're talking about, I have sometimes the city council debating about whether, we should have funding for additional cameras, that it's an invasion issue. It's not. Nobody cares about what you're doing on the strip unless you commit a crime. Then I care about it. Cameras are the most important things, but that's not up for me to decide. That's up for all of you to decide. But I'm telling you as a prosecutor that our videos, we have over 70 plus in Carbondale, and we also have mobile ones that even were used in this situation. When they go up, they need to be put up responsibly. They need to be an oversight. There needs to be leaders that make sure that we're using them for the right reasons. But that's up to you to decide. You go to city council, you tell them you want video cameras on the streets, you do it, and I'll use them, and I'll be able to prosecute better.
Hi. So I wanted to speak to the third category of gun violence that Joe was talking about, which is drugs or the drug trade. Sure. I wanted to speak about the third category of gun violence that Joe was mentioning, which is the drug trade, specifically because I think it also is related to quite a bit of other property crime and other factors that impact the neighborhood. To the extent that we can remove the profit motive from the drug trade, specifically I'm thinking about opioids right now, and I'm not sure what the extent of the opioid issue might be. I'm actually pretty new to Carbondale. But the gold standard for opioid addiction treatment is medication-assisted treatment, and to the extent that we can engage in a robust program to get that kind of treatment to current active addicts, I think that would go a long way towards addressing some of the underlying causes for violence and other kinds of crime.
And I can actually speak to this one a little bit myself, that we actually do have many MAT, it's called MAT, medication-assisted treatment for opioids specifically. We do have many MAT providers here in the county and across Southern Illinois. And in our own research that we have, actually the majority of drugs that people are using in Southern Illinois is methamphetamine. So here in Southern Illinois, opioid use has declined with the exception of fentanyl, which we have seen an increase in illicit fentanyl. But the majority of people who are actively using right now are using methamphetamine for that. So unfortunately, we don't have a MAT equivalent for it, but we do have programs and research programs down here to help people who are being released from detention to access treatment before they leave as well. So that way you can hopefully prevent further crime and also help them prevent overdoses after they leave.
The Center for Rural Health and Social Services Development just received a large grant to have a mobile MAT van. So that will be something that will be able to help with rural addiction, and it's mobile, so they'll be able to help people in that way. So that's new, that's coming up.
Yes, thank you for that. And it's going to be, they're partnering with the Community Action Place on that, which is our local harm reduction organization in Southern Illinois. So that will be coming to the communities as well for that.
Also on that, we're trying
trying to do whatever we can to distinguish between users, people who possess, and people who deliver. And there's a big difference in our office for that. I worked hard as an assistant to try to get drug court in Williamson County. And now as a Jackson County State's Attorney, when I started, my thing was to start drug court in Jackson County. As soon as January 1st, on January 1st, 2021, we have drug court for the first time in Jackson County history. And it's important because we're trying to distinguish people who have a drug addiction and a sickness, an illness, a disease, from people who are out on the street with a pound of this, a pound of that, and 2 firearms in their backpack. There's a substantial difference, and so I want to make sure that when we have a discussion in the community, we know that difference, and I want you to understand that my office knows that difference too, and I'm willing to work, we're trying to work with all the different resources in the community to get people who need help, and to put people, hold people accountable who need to be held accountable. That's 2 different issues in from our office's point of view.
That actually is a good segue into a question that came online from Mary O'Hara. She just had a question about restorative justice programs that you had been working on starting last year, the year before, and if things were still moving forward on some of that activity.
Thank you. So again, resources are always a problem. When all of my prosecutors, when I'm short prosecutors and we all have to be in the courtroom, it's hard to make calls to resource centers and to meet with community groups outside of work and to go after work and do things because we're just trying to get by and be in court 5 days a week. That's why whether your state's attorney's office is staffed and has resources is necessary. It's a necessary question. We can't do community programs or even drug court if we don't have the person in the seat. It's as simple as that. So yes, the question is yes, we have pushed off. We have drug court. We have a number of warrant amnesty programs to make sure that parents are not driving their kids to school worried about getting pulled over with a warrant. We have a number of diversion programs for youth. And then we're working with the community on a number of different programs to stop kids from getting into those situations in the first place. And then it's about policies in our office. There is a first-time gun offender statute that was rarely used. There's somebody under the age of 21 who's caught with a gun and they have no criminal history. We work with them so if they follow probation and use the resources available, it won't be a felony on their record for the first time. As well as first-time offender and, of course, drug court, like I said. And we're working with the restorative justice program here in Carbondale that I believe has just got funding. We've worked with them on the documents necessary so that we can refer youth to the program 2 a month as of right now. We hope to expand that. She's also able to come into my office and open up files and look at these files so that we can find the right people for that. And then there's a number of other programs that we talk about. The Citizens Advisory Board that has sputtered a little bit, but we're still working on that, and some other groups. But I'm open to working with any of these community organizations. But as I get more busy in my office, if I don't have a program manager, it's a lot more difficult to work on programs when I simply have to be in the seat to prosecute. And I do not want this to be a county where I simply prosecute every day, 9 to 5, and then go home. You guys deserve better than that, and then again, that comes down to resources.
Hi, Mr. District Attorney. Thank you. And I hope I speak for everybody saying that we are so grateful for our police here. I hope that there's no bad vibes between the people and the police. So my question then is, you need these resources, and you're telling us you need more resources, and we hear you. We can only, we could vote out the county board, we can vote out other people or vote in other people, but it sounds like even then you're going to need some money. And maybe if you had a goal of dollars in mind, like GoFundMe, I would contribute $1,000 personally for a safer neighborhood. I don't know how many other people, but I'm serious. Other places have done this, so I'm just curious what you think about that.
And the reason why I love that is because I think you speak for a lot of people that if we had an opportunity to have an ideal police force, an ideal state's attorney's office properly resourced, not too much, but enough to make sure that we're thinking ahead of time and we're being proactive instead of waiting for things to happen and then wondering if we have enough manpower. I think most citizens are exactly exactly in the same position as you are. I asked 2 things on that. One is to make sure you're speaking with your county board. I've been doing a little test since I was defunded over last year, over this year. I've been asking people if they know who their county board person is, and I haven't got an answer yet of anybody who knows. Even some of our leaders who are elected in the community, they don't know who their board member is, and I don't mean to call anybody out, it's just the way it is. But this is what I'm gonna do because of your question. Over the next 30 days, I'm gonna put together a schematic, and using the data in my office, I'm gonna put together what I need in my office, and I'm gonna publish that in every way that I can. And I'm gonna tell the community what I need. And if I had this, in a matter of time, hold me accountable and see if what I said I can do. So thank you for that. I'm gonna get that done, and I'm gonna get it out in 30 days.
As a follow-up to that,
What resources do you need outside of just monetary support?
I'm gonna ask Nancy if she can answer that, maybe.
It's right there. It's like I'm looking for you. I can't find people. Excuse me. You can hold it if you want.
The redeploy program, is that a program only offered to you through police involvement?
Speak up.
The redeploy program, is that a program only offered to the youth through police involvement?
the redeploy program?
Yes. Yes, is that only offered to the youth through police involvement? Do they have to have police involvement to be in that program?
Yes.
Usually, so there's a redeploy, and if Kyle can answer this too, because I know he's really involved. I'm on the board for the adult redeploy. So there is a youth one, and we do have a youth one. It's located in Union County, right near Anna Jonesboro. And they provide services for the Southern Illinois area. Of course, they're restricted the farther out you get from there. There is an adult redeploy, and I'm on the board for that for the state of Illinois. And Jackson County is not a participant, even though we meet the criteria in almost every one of their requirements. So right now, we're working offline to try to get someone to sponsor that program and be a recipient of that funding in Illinois. And typically, you do not have to be law enforcement involved to be a part of the program, but typically that's how we find, let's be honest, that's how we find people that need help in a lot of ways. Usually, if it's not through the school, it's through law enforcement. Those are the 2 points in our pipeline that we find troubled individuals that need resources. Typically, the first obviously is with school, and then several incidents later, it's usually with our criminal justice system, and we would refer them over to programs like Adult Redeploy and our Youth Redeploy.
I'm gonna jump in here real quick. We've heard from a lot of folks that are a little bit older today, but we've got some younger folks in the audience that would like to make a statement or have some questions.
Okay, hello. Everybody, my name is Philip Johnson. Hello, my name is Philip Johnson. I'm a freshman psychology major at Morehouse College. And so today I just wanted to say that as youth, I just feel like we need more counseling and therapy opportunities. I know that a lot of guys that I know that I went to high school with, just the youth in general, have a hard time with their mental health, whether that's depression, anxiety, PTSD due to all the tragic incidents. So if we was to develop opportunities and safe spaces that allows the youth to express themselves and express their emotions and how they're feeling, then I think we would see a positive change.
And to add to that, I feel like as a representation of the youth and the next generation, I feel like we need to be more active, have more activities such as basketball, things that has us locked in and supporting one another, like the Boys and Girls Club. That's a great example of one of those activity things for children to go to as kind of like an escape through the stuff that they go through every day and things like that. And I know me personally, that helped me throughout my high school. I went to the Boys and Girls Club every day playing basketball. But more things like that can help other students, other peers, other people my age, even younger people. And I feel like that's what we need, just to keep us out of the streets, keep us out of the distractions, gun violence, all type of things like that.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I'm gonna keep moving down the line here into the audience.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, young man, even though you got some gray in your beard. I got a whole lot of gray on my head. Thank you for this opportunity to come out and speak to you as a board. Can you hear me?
A little louder.
Is this a little better?
Yes.
Thank you. Young man. All right. All right. It's very important that we have these types of meetings, but I believe we're missing a very important point. I believe we're missing something. We're looking at actions. A shooting is an action. A shooting is a movement that someone thought about. And after they thought about it, they pulled the trigger. So we don't understand the pathology. We don't understand how information goes into the mind of a child and how that child digests that information as food for thought. And then after that information is digested, an action or a reaction occurs. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because if we don't begin to recognize what's happening in the psychology of human beings, regardless of race, creed, or color, or gender, if we don't begin to understand that, we'll be doing this for another 100 years. What we're doing right here, this problem will not go away. It will not go away until we get to the root, until we get to the psychology and the methodology of how human beings develop on step by step, stage by stage, human development. We don't want monster development, bear development. We want human development. So in the light of that, what I just said, 6 years ago, made a suggestion to City Hall in writing, here it is right here, 2017, for a study that is conducted by the university here that we have in town, religious leaders, social leaders, and educators to all come together and sit down at a table and hash these concepts out. And then once they're thought out, they make a presentation back to us. And then we get a chance to exercise our democratic rights. So if you would, Mr., what is your name? So I'm sorry. The attorney, the state's attorney? Mr. State's Attorney, if you could check city records, because at this point I'm holding their feet to the fire on this, because this was, as I say, it was presented years ago, and it was ignored. Now we're in a day and a time where the fire that started in the bathroom is now engulfing the whole house. So we have to put this out. And if you would you please, I'm going to give you a copy. I'm going to give you a copy of this. No, I got more copies.
I'm so sorry.
I want to give it to him personally.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
All right. So we're going to do one more comment and then move into actionable steps, kind of shift the tone a little bit.
Can we do just a couple? Sam's
well,
had his
Nathan
hand
said a
up for a minute.
couple more,
Sam,
so
can we get
let's-
one in real quick? I'm sorry.
Okay, so we're going to do D.
Oh,
He's been waiting.
all right.
All right. So let's. There we go.
I don't need that.
Well, it's for the
Oh,
live stream.
okay. My question is to you, Kyle. The reason we're here today and we're so frustrated is because our city did not respond to us. Our city manager refused to come to this meeting because he said it'd be unproductive. My question is, what do we have to do to get the city to be more responsive to us and be helpful to us? If we hadn't started this organization, if we hadn't done what we did, I don't think they'd be rolling up anybody right now. I'll be honest with you. It's gone on for a year and a half. It was only when the Arbor District started moving on December the 21st that these things started happening. My question is, from people who are elected to city, the people who want to talk about it, how do we get in touch with the city manager? What in the world is wrong with those people?
All right. I think we've got an answer from that, from Adam here.
Yeah, let me step up here.
Yeah, go ahead and step on. Yeah, come on around. Just hold on to it.
All right.
Press the power button.
Hang on.
Take your time.
Tell me the button. What do I need to do?
Just don't press it.
Don't press it. All right.
Stand right there.
Okay. So I'm going to answer that, but before I do, I'm going to thank Ms. Brawley-Sussman for her accurate presentation. I appreciate the accuracy. It's very important that you have accurate information when you're making decisions about what to do. You shouldn't rely on people's misrepresentations or people's self-serving partisan statements. I would encourage you to look more deeply into these things and find actual, useful, real information. Now, my name's Adam Lose. I'm on the city council. So I was on the panel, but there was a decision made that shouldn't be, for reasons that you'll see. And so I want to speak to those of you who are actually in the Arbor District specifically, okay? I'm going to correct just one of the falsehoods and misrepresentations that I've heard today. I'll tell you something, my son lives half his time with me. The other half of his time, he lives within sight of this house where these shootings have occurred, okay? So there was one in October or so of, I don't know when it was 2001, and this, 2021. And I called the city manager, I raised hell, this cannot happen. I thought it was dealt with, I didn't hear more about it from my ex-wife, didn't hear more about it in the paper, thought it was handled. Then she calls me on December 19th, 10:30 at night. Bear in mind, I'm not her favorite person, but she's calling me about it because this is happening. And so since that day, if Gary was here, he'd tell you, I have been on him constantly. And so when you hear somebody say, oh, well, it wasn't until we started to mobilize. No, it was when I went down to City Hall and raised hell. It was when I went to the police department, Ms. Harvey was there too, and wouldn't let them off the hook, and now we've got cops there. So I would encourage you, one, to make sure that you're getting accurate information. Don't just believe what people say to you. Number two, when the question is, what can we do? What can we do? Okay, now I'm talking here to the people in the Arbor District specifically. Get involved with your organization, please, because it's important. I wish that we had neighborhood organizations organized in every neighborhood. We don't. We've got one. That's what I would prefer. We've got one organized here. The problem that you have is that for years, your leadership, informally, has resided in folks who have spent decades, you're going to have to excuse my language, shitting in every nest in Carbondale. And when you have something like this that becomes their show, people don't want to engage. And so and I'm here, and I've sat here, my heart rate is easy 30 above my resting rate. I've just been sitting here boiling this whole time. So what I'd ask you to do, I'm trying. Thank you. I'm very much trying. I'm trying very hard. So get involved with your organization and change the locus of control in that group to people who aren't operating on their own agenda, people who can be reasonable and work with others. There are people that are difficult to work with, believe me, I know. But there are some people that you just can't work with. And I'd encourage you to make sure that the people who are controlling this organization are people that you can.
So it's our fault. All right. So we're gonna go right into Sam. Sam has been waiting diligently since the start of the program. I want to get Sam's comment real quick, and then we'll jump back to you guys on the panel. All right. Thank you.
Got to speak into this?
Yeah, just talk where you're at, Sam. You're good.
On about 9/2021, Carbondale Mayor Henry, I saw him at Trey's Hombre's bar. He told me, we cannot handle all the shootings. It's a drug war between Cairo, Carbondale, and Mount Vernon. They're fighting over the Carbondale area. I attended the 11/9/2022 Cairo housing meeting. They voted to tear down the Colonel Smith building, gave the people 90 days to move out, and they're moving a lot of those people back to the Carbondale area, so get ready for some more shooting. We got 30 Carbondale police officers about SI, 35 SIU, Jackson County, Illinois State Police area in the Carbondale area. Got a $10,000 police department. The simple solutions have a car park in this parking lot right here for this at Arbor District. What are they doing now? You got all this, just park a car there. We had the same problem at the Trey's Hombre's parking lot, and they cars are parked there, and I guess they moved over this way.
So Sam, is the question, how are we handling the regional violence issue?
No, I'm saying a simple solution to have a car park.
Okay. But I'm looking for a question from you here. What's the big question you want to ask?
Well, I got one more comment.
I know you got a lot of questions.
No, one more comment. On his Jackson County not funding you, they got $8 million in ARP funding. They spent $100,000 on the Unhaid Center. And last comment, SIU is the only college party in America with 3 unsolved student murders.
Okay. Where are we at in questions from the back of the room still, Kyle? Okay. I'm sorry. My apologies.
First off, when we're talking about the incidents are happening over the last year and a half, you're right. I came into office and we had in the Arbor District several shootings, Poplar Street, Cherry Street, Beverage Street, some of the gangs or affiliated gangs, wannabe gangs named after those streets. We've steadily put those incidents, those people responsible in jail. Some of them are in IDOC already, and some of them are in our jail right now. We literally had a list of individuals who were either living in that area or frequenting that area and shooting in that area, and we have slowly gone through that list. Some of the kids that were still not picked up from those incidents last summer were still out. Some of them had been victims themselves, and they started a retaliatory action themselves. It wasn't the fact that all of a sudden we're doing something about it. When these shots rang out on Forestry, I'm not sure who that was, a city council member. Nothing specifically going to the police did not all of a sudden start an investigation. That's just false. When those shots rang out, I was called, and I have the phone records to prove it. We are consistently working on any shooting in Carbondale, but then another one comes up, and we only have so many detectives. So if he wants to talk about what we're doing, he needs to start looking at whether we have enough investigators and whether Chief Reno has the resources he needs. Additionally, I think there was a lot of conversation with the city council about taking video or taking cameras and license plate readers off of the docket for Chief Reno. And that's the opposite of what we want to do, because security cameras help me get people who need to be held accountable off the street. So the tough talk is fine, but when you're sitting behind the city council and making decisions for public safety, you got to vote for video cameras and other things that make our community safe. It's simple as that. And so that I took a little, it's a little bit off as far as what happens. We are always working on it. Now, when a citizen goes and complains, it's because we haven't been, once the investigation starts, we may not have told everybody how we're investigating. When those shots rang out, there was no press release that said shell casings have already been gathered. State's Attorney Cervantes requested an expedited process to analyze those shell casings. Cervantes asked for those to be put into NIBIN so that we could compare them with other guns and other offenses in Carbondale. That specific detective requested help from so-and-so. Those press releases don't say what your police officers are doing. It didn't say that I was woken up on Saturday morning last week to go to the Williamson County Sheriff's Office with 2 detectives from Carbondale. that doesn't get shared because we're working on those investigations. But if you call my office and call the police department, and sometimes, like people like Ms. Harvey and others go in and ask what's going on, we'll let you know. But make no mistake about it, from my view, and I'm not a police officer, I'm the chief law enforcement officer, but I'm not a police officer, I have oversight on that, and they're working their tails off to try to solve these crimes. As far as the student homicides or death investigations, we're always looking into that. But again, it falls into budgets and whether I have to be in the courtroom 5 days a week or whether I have time to work on cases that are from 1996, which we're working on, from 2014 and from last summer. Those cold cases are very expensive for the county to work on, and again, we have to find time. That's why you just got to find a love seat that's comfortable to sleep on.
Nathan? Can
You
I
want to do Diane
respond?
real?
Yeah, I do want to get Nancy the opportunity, but also can I just say that I speak with the city manager very regularly about gun violence. It is very much an issue that is on his radar, that he is very much working on solutions to this problem. He should be here.
Moving forward.
I speak to him all the time.
Nancy? Sorry.
She's coming.
You can speak from back there or up here, your preference, Nancy.
I want everybody to hear.
Okay, very good.
It's right up here is what I'm told.
There's Mike.
I have one of those things. Is it on?
Yep, it's on. You're good.
So hello, my name is Nancy Maxwell. I'm the director of Carbondale United, and we have been working on gun violence for the last 3 years. The one thing that I haven't really heard here is why we have gun violence. Because if you know the why, then you can come up with a solution. I feel like this was kind of like a separation. It's the Arbor District and Carbondale. We should be one city. If gun violence happens north, east, south, or west, I should see this many people come out. This is not a new problem. When we had a 6-year-old that got shot in her bedroom watching TV, I didn't see the uproar or any people coming out and saying, hey, we need to stop this. It needs to be a everybody problem. And I do want to correct Mr. Reed because I thought his comment was really cast and downgrading to the citizens of Cairo who have no choice to move. The ones that were here were veterans, senior citizens, single mothers. They weren't the ones out there shooting. They don't have no choice in where they go. What we can do as Carbondale, as a city, is welcome them in like we didn't do the first time. And make sure that they know that the resources and things are here available. Not just, oh, they coming and now we're gonna have more shooting. Nobody has evidence that the people in Cairo are responsible for the shooting. And I am from Cairo originally, and I felt very insulted with that. Okay, all right. They told me to cut.
Yeah, you're good. All right. Take that one to Kyle, Nancy. All right. Is there any overarching question that somebody is absolutely dedicated to us getting answered? Do we feel like we have made the progress thus far?
So
Okay. No, I don't see any additional hands.
I do want to say real quick, we made a list of questions for the panelists as an Arbor District. But we wanted to give people a chance to ask those here first. So I will be sending those after the meeting if you get a chance to look at those and there's any of them that you would, because I'd like to make sure those do get at least looked at and we can get some sort of response that way.
Is there any one question from the Arbor District that you'd like to get out there for our panel, Kyle? Sorry. If the answer is no, that's good.
I do have a comment. I think that one of the issues that faced us in the neighborhood, and it may well face people in other neighborhoods, is that the person who's brought us this information and who got us motivated felt very strongly that he did not get a response from the police that seemed appropriate. And he was also told he should not put the gunshots on social media. And the impression that he got, and that I think those of us he spoke with in the neighborhood got, was that this was a problem that, yeah, everybody knows it's happening, but we aren't going to talk about it. We're going to keep it under wraps so that the public doesn't get whatever. We don't get a bad reputation, we don't get alarmed, you know, whatever the situation is, whatever the motivation is, but that it's kept under wraps and quiet. So don't say it on social media. The fact that our city manager refused to come to this, he would come to a small meeting with our board, but he would not come to a public meeting with all of us who are here, and he would not allow the police chief to come either. And so that, I think, is a real issue that we need to address.
So, yeah, hold on. So, where we're at now, right, is refocusing on closing out the program related to gun violence specifically. In terms of the interaction between organizations, individuals, and the city, we are not here to litigate that component. Okay, we have got information from the city here that's been provided. We have a plethora of elected officials that are in the building that are taking this information on. Okay, we have open lines of communication. Is there anything additional that you would like to add to the interaction that you're having with Gary Williams and where your next steps lie there?
Yeah, so I was disappointed that Gary wasn't going to be able to come, right? I've been able to talk with him about other things in the past, but I also, at the same time, can understand part of where he's coming from, but also I would like him to have been here today. But as far as the inner workings of him telling them not to go, I don't know that I can verify that because I wasn't in those conversations. But I do just want to kind of, when we're refocusing back to close it out, I do just want to touch real quick on something Jane said because state's attorney is here. If we hear gunshots, right, does posting a video on social media, is that going to impact your ability to prosecute?
That's a really good question because people relate the police saying don't post that to trying to cover up something. And that's a normal thing. You know, we want to make organization out of chaos, right? We don't get answers. We want our own we want to organize it. So from my point of view, it doesn't necessarily affect it. However, it could. And the reason why is because when we have a drive-by situation, which is one of the most difficult things to try to investigate, it was fortunate that they investigated this and we kind of knew who didn't like those individuals prior to us, you know, as soon as the shots fired, we kind of already knew, you know, had some suspects. And so if there were to interview some witnesses like the neighbors or people across the street and it's been posted and they say, oh yeah, it was a red car for sure. And it was definitely 10 shots. Well, maybe they didn't personally see it, but they saw it on Facebook. And so now I'm faced as a state's attorney to try to figure out whether their testimony is because they saw it or because their friends told them about it or because they saw it on social media. So there is an issue. It's a case-by-case basis. Sometimes it helps citizens come forward and say, I know that guy, I know that car, that's what it is. Typically, when that comes to that point, police are smart enough to put it out and say, look, we got nothing. Let's put it out to the public and ask for their help. Or sometimes when they're trying to investigate it from the beginning with no leads, they want to make sure that all the information they're getting is because it's information from first-hand witnesses. And so I think we have to take it with a grain of salt, try to figure out why it is they're not wanting to release the information, whether it's number one or number two.
So we're going to close out the program now, but I do want to end on a step of action, right? Because like I said at the beginning, a meeting won't solve this problem. And we know that this has been a problem across the whole community. I do want to point out, though, before we mention that Adam mentioned that we are the only neighborhood association here in the town. But if you are having issues like this in your community, I will make sure that I can get my email to you. where if this is happening in your part of the town, let me know. And we will be there to help you guys too, because if gun violence is happening here in the Arbor District, everybody else in Carbondale is unsafe. Just as if it's happening in one other area, we're all at risk then. So please, yes, so please feel free to utilize our board and have us help with whatever that's going to be. So to close it out, I would like each of the panelists to say, one thing that they think could be a solution, or one thing that you think everybody here as just a citizen can do for action as a next step.
Well, we focused very heavily on the law enforcement and social work, I guess you'd call it, support systems. And the two things that I think that we have not addressed that I think are really needed is, one, to improve the quality of our housing in Carbondale so that people have decent places to live in. And I think that causes an overall drop in all kinds of crime, which creates a climate. And the other thing is that I think we need summer jobs programs for our youth. We used to have a lot of federal money back in the olden days when I was young. There was lots of money for youth job programs, and that money has all gone away. And people have to feel a sense of self-worth and competence and the ability to earn money legally, even if it's not big flashy money, but to have the money, honest labor. I believe in honest labor. And I think we need to find ways to provide that for all our youth. So.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. So I think it's important that in the discussions going forward that we remember that there's different types of gun violence, that one youth program is not going to solve the gun problem with someone getting out of IDOC after 10 years of incarceration, that a youth program is not going to solve a domestic violence issue. But when we think about gun violence, ask the question first, what type of gun violence is this? Before we try to start solving the problem. And so ask what type of gun violence and know that there's different solutions to each type of gun violence. Second, there are solutions that everybody can take at all different levels. First, with City Council. Why are we renting out apartments and houses for the night that don't have furniture in them? Why are landlords renting out things for a week? Why is that available? Why are we creating a situation where people can have house parties when we know what their intent is? House parties that lead to shootings, like that caused the death of Keishana Jackson.
Yes, yes.
Why did everyone in that neighborhood disappear that night and no one cooperate with law enforcement? Not just that, but what was the atmosphere and the environment that created that situation in the first place? Why are there people in the city of Carbondale that are allowed to run a liquor establishment that does not have video cameras at the exits and the entrances, when somebody who we know as a shooter was out at the bar, but we can't prove they were in Carbondale? That's a simple solution that cities have fixed. You want a liquor license? Be responsible. Have a camera behind your bar so we know who was there that night. There's situations that aren't necessarily tied directly to gun violence that can help our neighborhoods and the safety in our neighborhoods. Be open to those ideas. Be open to those discussions, and don't make them political or partisan. What's going to make our neighborhood safer? Third, I strenuously tell you to participate in one social organization at least, even if you're involved in this board and with this neighborhood association. I can't tell you how many times I go to an organizational meeting and it's the same people from the last meeting. And then I go to the third meeting and it's the same 5 people from the 2 before it. We have a handful of people that are taking the burden of the resources and gaining the resources and asking for the grants that the community should be doing. And so I know that we have busy work schedules, But if you have an opportunity, be a part of one or another one. If you don't agree with one, become a part of the other one. Reach out to Carolyn Harvey. Reach out to the different people that we know are involved with organizations and become a part of them, because we need your input. We need your wisdom. We need your experience. Let's not just let this be about those handful of people who are taking that whole burden. Become a part of one of those organizations in the next several months. Just do it. Lastly, hold your local officials accountable. Don't wait for another shooting like this to wake you up, because I'm telling you, it's consistent, but law enforcement's working for you. It just doesn't happen as fast as you'd like it to sometimes. I try to work it out so it does, and we work hard, but it doesn't always happen that way. So make sure you hold them accountable. Show up to city council meetings and tell them that when we're debating cameras, the answer is yes, because it helps keep our neighborhoods safe. When we're debating funding for our resources, the answer is yes, as long as it's reasonable and there's an explanation for it. You know, show up and hold people accountable. Know who your county board is. Know that our population in Jackson County is decreasing and our taxes are increasing, that enrollment is down, and we have work to do. But it's not the Arbor District's responsibility, it's Jackson County's responsibility. Who's your board member, who's your city council member, and vote. The most important things. You know, one of the things I love is that when we get to see the candidates show up at the discussions on the library website, I love that. But one time is not enough. We need to do it more often. We need to have them here in this district, the county board members and the city council members, and let them talk about what they're gonna do. Know who you're voting for, don't make it partisan. And then lastly, make sure you know that you always have an opportunity to reach out to our office if you need to. I answer the phone, and I have most of the people here have my cell phone. If there is a specific person, a specific car, a specific problem, call me. I will look into it. If you don't get an answer in the police department, I'm the chief law enforcement officer of the county. I will find that answer out if it's out there, and I will get back to you. I've done it. I've been doing it. I'm going to continue to do it. You guys keep my light bill on. I work for you. So call me and let me know, and I will try to figure out what's going on and give you the answer. Thank you.
Where's the university?
What's that?
We need everybody here to advocate for, support, and be a part of organizations that are being a part of the solution. As I said before, there's nobody you can yell at who can fix this. This is a synergistic situation. We all have to be a part of the solution. This has been going on in other neighborhoods and throughout this community and throughout this region for a very long time, to be a part of the solution. If you think you have something to offer to an organization, as Joe said, then join that organization. Tell them what you have to offer, be a part of that, and please advocate for the funding that is necessary to the organizations that need it. Be a respectful community participant. It's not just a matter of holding people's feet to the fire, because there's no one person who, no matter how much you burn their feet, is going to be able to help you. We have to all be in this together. We have to, as the young men up there said, we have to support the psychological and mental health needs of youth who are traumatized by this, give them an emotional outlet, give them things that they can participate in, and that is the responsibility of all of us.
There is time for citizen comments, and each of the agenda items you get to to discuss it. Joe, when is the county board meeting, the full board meeting?
Usually the third Tuesday of the month at 6 o'clock at the courthouse in Murfreesboro.
And I urge everyone to show up county meeting, because I don't think they have many participants.
The only people there usually is the county board.
Right.
And that's it.
And I think if we want anything to change.
I'm sorry, and Miss Harvey.
And if we want anything to change so that we have more resources for law enforcement at the county level, I think we have to start going to the county boards.
We did invite them.
Yes, so for myself, neighborhood association, one of the biggest things is like meeting your neighbors for me. I don't know if anybody here walks their dog or takes walks around their neighborhoods, wherever it is, and feels like a general sense of distrust. If you see other people on the street, a lot of times people aren't acknowledging each other, people are trying to stay away from each other, even in our own district. So take the time to get to know who your neighbors are, because we're gonna be able to keep each other safe and be able to protect each other and be able to activate
and mobilize when this type of stuff happens. So participate in that and everything else I said. Maybe give money too.
And when is our membership meeting?
Yes, so our membership meeting is going to be on January 22nd. There's flyers up here. Benjamin, can you go back a couple slides, please? Couple more. Right there. Oh. So the Arbor District, go try not to be in the shadow. So our boundaries for the for our membership are slightly different than the TIF that the city has. But the Arbor District is going to run from Illinois, which is over here, down to Mill Street, and then we're going up here through both 13s, all the way to Oakland, all right? So anywhere in that distance, so from Illinois to Oakland, we are going to be the Arbor District, and you're welcome to come to that meeting. Flyers are there.
We have one other.
Yes.
Okay, cool. If we jump into that.
So we have one last action item, and then we are closing out.
Hello, my name is Heather Hazlett. This is obviously a multifaceted issue. I just wanted, while there were so many concerned stakeholders here present, to touch on one of them. I actually originally wrote the redeploy grant for the First Circuit, and I just wanted to bring up as a potential action plan that if we were to create a juvenile justice council for Jackson County, that part of that is to identify what are our problems that our youth are facing. You actually have youth come in as stakeholders in those meetings so that they can say what's affecting them, what can help them, and you identify your community services that can work with you to properly utilize this funding. So for example, Redeploy Illinois is a grant that gets resubmitted every year. The Juvenile Justice Council can actually help advise the board where they think those funds should be spent. And additionally, they can identify areas where outside of grant funding, we could come together and fund services. So I wanted to bring that up. That's maybe something that we could look at as an action plan to move forward and help you.
Thank you. Yes, so I have Miss Harvey over there reminding me, if you didn't get a slip of paper to put your name and email address, we'd like to make sure that people have the information from today sent to them and be able to type up notes from it as well. So in an effort to close this out, show of hands, who here is going to attend a city council meeting in the next month? All right, who's going to go to a county board meeting? Yes. All right, who is going to make an effort to meet at least one neighbor? One new neighbor, there we go. All right, and who is going to be attending the Arbor District annual meeting here in a few weeks? Better see everybody living here. All right. The 22nd at 3 p.m. in the same location. There are flyers by this table when you leave that will reflect that. Okay, Nathan, anything else?
Yeah, here we go. Neighborhood Alliance meeting February 4th.
Okay, and let's get.
When you're done, take your chairs and stack them against those two walls. Awesome.
All right, one other meeting. Oh, and then we've got just at request from the library, we have the Neighborhood Alliance meeting February 4th. Close enough. All right, February 4th, the Neighborhood Alliance meeting.
All right, give it up for our panelists.
Thank you.
Oh, you like this? We got so many historic houses for sale. They're cheap too.